Avatar.
Avatar the Last
Avatar the Last Airbender.
Avatar the Last Airbender.
Avatar is a new...
I'm going to be ranking every single type of bending in Avatar, finishing with the main elements such as air, fire, earth, and water, whilst also covering the sub-elements such as blood bending, lava bending, combustion bending, light and metal, and more. Now we have Bloodbending. I'm so excited about this one. Like literally Yakone, Noatak, Tarlok, all these people can bend without a full moon. Like, you can literally just straight up walk to anyone. Like even a chi blocker. Like all of a sudden the effects of a chi blocker on you is mitigated completely because they can't even fucking move. They're dead. They're literally dead. I'm just gonna break their neck if I'm a bloodbender. The idea that they can also be a waterbender is like, it's like cheating. Like, I don't know what you do in that situation. They literally can give the Avatar a run for their money. Like, Yakone almost killed Aang by snapping him in half. He controlled like a whole army, a legion of people. He just made Toph just walk right over and float and just unlock his keys. Like, what the? I think Kyoshi as well froze someone's blood. Yang Chen, I think, exploded someone's insides. It's pretty creative, I'm not gonna lie, but this is such an easy S tier. I think everyone gives this one an S tier, I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely in God tier for me. We're putting it up the top. It's beating everyone. Don't chat shit. Everyone agrees. Like, you can do anything with this, I'm pretty sure. The only way you can beat this is go into the Avatar state, and the only one that can do that is Aang or Korra. So it's like, how do you even beat this thing? Like, the only one I would say is like an airbender. If you can somehow quickly like generate air or like hit the ground and just stop them from even moving. Or like even an earthbender, just literally blocking them from even being able to bend. Bloodbending's going in God tier. To me, combustion bending is probably the most OP fucking thing in the entire world. Like, you literally have a fucking RPG on your goddamn forehead. Like, the presence they have in battle is absolutely absurd. And the fact that people know you can disable them just by hitting them on their head, that's probably the only weakness. But if you don't know that, what the fuck do you do in that situation? They're just gonna molest you. And actually, the funny thing is, they can actually still firebend. They can manipulate the direction of their combustion bending. Like, that to me is insane. Like, Plee, during a couple episodes, was able to like literally shoot her combustion bending around the corner and explode people. And she can still firebend. Like, that to me is absurd. Like, it's so OP, you don't even have to use combustion bending. And when you do, you can take out like 50 people at once. The absolute fucking aura of a combustion bender is insane. We're gonna put it in the really good tier. Now for the shittest one ever. Spirit bending, absolute dog shit. You can literally teleport to another location or go to the spirit world for some reason. I don't know why you would do that. Plus, you can only access this if you're an airbender, which is slightly weird, but okay, whatever, I guess. Also, it only works unless you're spiritually enlightened, whatever the fuck that means. But I guess it's essentially like a worse version of Seismic Sense. And if you're really unlucky and you do happen to wander in the spirit world by any chance, you might die due to the unknown and inconsistent nature of spirits or the world itself. You know, like the fog of lost souls? Yeah. Fuck. No. We're putting it in the bottom tier. Lava bending for me is one of the most unique ones, or one of the more unique ones, because if you look at it, it's probably the second best bending type besides bloodbending, I think, or second to bloodbending, if you want to look at it like that. And it's one of those ones where when you step on the field, or the playing field, or the battlefield, or whatever it is, it's one of those ones where if you have lava bending as its own ability, excluding the other bending types, you have that presence that completely changes the trajectory of that battlefield or that fight. The idea that you can just molest armies with fucking lava is just ridiculous. You can just freeze it hard, or I guess make it rock solid, or you can turn it into molten lava again and force it into a fucking wave and just murder everyone. Like, the only downside is probably you can kill yourself with it, but that's more of like a skill issue, if I'm being honest with you. Like, we saw firsthand what Ghazan can do, like with lava bending. The idea that you can just take hold down cities, civilizations, things like that, and I mean, he can turn it into like a shuriken and literally make it insanely quick. Imagine a Sanbender that has lava bending, because remember, it's a sub-type, technically speaking. So you're just turning sand into fucking lava. And now you're just molesting people with wind that's actually lava. Putting it just under bloodbending and God tier.
Take off the foo-foo.
Take off the couches, take off the Wi-Fi.
Alrighty, light. Light for me is kind of weird because I feel like with air or any other element combined together or as something to complement another bender would be pretty good. Like I would instantly put that probably in S tier. But I think as a result, being judged based solely by itself as an ability, I'm probably going to put this in the bottom tier purely because of the fact that I feel like, what are you going to do with it? Like meditate in the air? You know what I mean? Float? You know what I mean? I may as well just fucking have a wank in the corner.
Daddy, chill.
Like this shit is fucking stupid. You know what I mean? Like you're literally solely at the mercy of other benders and other elements. An earthbender could literally fuck you up the ass by like encasing you in rock. Like it's really not that impressive, to be honest with you. So instantly, straight in the bottom tier. It's irrelevant, suck my ass. Change my mind, flight's fun, so I'm putting it in usable. Swamp bending. First of all, I just wanted to say, if combustion bending is like an RPG, then swamp bending is like a tank. And it can also be used for offensive and defensive purposes, just like any other bending element, if I'm being honest. Another major positive of swamp bending is that in any setting, such as rivers, jungles, and forests, it can actually be used to their advantage due to their swamp-dense environments. Then there's also the similar situation with sand bending. You see, while swamp benders can still water bend within a non-swampy environment, they still lose their advantage of being able to manipulate vegetation and mud, therefore reducing their ability, versatility, and effectiveness in a battle scenario. Another thing to note is that ice-based water bending can neutralize swampy attacks, freezing plants infused with water or mud, mobilizing their resource. I'm putting swamp bending in the bad tier. Up next, we got lightning benders. Lightning bending as a variation of fire bending is kind of interesting because of the fact that it's like a sniper rifle. If it hits you, you're fucking dead. Besides that, like it takes so long to wind up. And sometimes it's not that lethal because it can be shot back. To be honest with you, I'm not really particularly sure if only firebenders can redirect lightning. I'm pretty sure maybe other people can do it too, because the way Iroh speaks about it is it's like a redirection of chi. So I could be wrong here, but if only firebenders can do it, it's kind of not that useful, except it is against other benders. But at the same time, it takes a really long time to charge up, and I get sometimes that you don't need to charge it up, but it is super lethal, and especially when against a waterbender, it's incredibly OP, because, I mean, well, lightning is gonna literally travel across the water and electrocute the person bending it, so. Also, lightning bending can be used to immobilize people. I'm not really sure if you can also change the strength of the lightning you're bending, which could be interesting. I'm putting lightning bending above flight in the amazing tier. And now, unfortunately, we gotta do healing, because it's shit. No one likes to do it, and it's terrible. I can't believe this is actually an ability, but we're gonna do it anyway. Advanced waterbenders can also help to heal large groups of allies through niche applications such as neutralizing poisons, soothing burns, or even spiritual or chi disruptions. However, there's also a resource dependency issue here. You see, healing requires water, limiting its use in environments where water is either scarce or inaccessible. Who would have thought, motherfucker? Another thing to consider is that healing is reactive and not preventative, and it can't undo fatal injuries or immediately counter large-scale attacks that can incapacitate or overwhelm multiple allies at once. The only way you can really change this is if you were to take water from, let's say, the North Pole in a spirit oasis. But this can only be used once. Great for defense, shit for offense, I'm putting it in usable. Sanbenders, okay, let's go. So the first thing is that fine-grained particles are harder to control with accuracy, particularly for earthbenders who lack experience in sandbending. Even skilled earthbenders like Toph struggled with it initially. And then there's also the fact that sand grains also lack cohesion and are not as durable as solidified rock, which I'd imagine is more difficult and takes more effort to alter the state of. And now, the elephant in the room, the nail in the coffin, sandbending, as you know, is highly environment specific, making it a nightmare for at least anyone trying to be outside of places like the desert. Can you imagine sandbending in a fucking ocean? Yeah, it's not really gonna go well, is it? Something you may not have noticed is that strong winds can actually probably nullify sandbending techniques and therefore render them useless and ineffective. Also tornadoes, hurricanes, probably tsunamis, and that fucking sandworm from Doom.
Listen, I gave you.
Dear, we are in trouble.
Same problems as swamp bending, but slightly worse. Metal bending can be used for both offensive or defensive purposes due to its strong and sturdy nature. It's like earth bending in a way, but far more dense, and in the Avatar universe, it can be considered to be somewhat indestructible. Its malleable state also allows it to be changed from a graphite sheet of metal or something like that into a blade or sharp object, maybe even a crushing type construct. Another positive of metal benders is that, especially in urban environments, they're able to change structures such as pipes, railways, armor, and machinery into tools and weapons, which gives them such a huge advantage over other benders. However, whilst their environment can also be to their salvation, it can also be to their detriment too. Let's say if we were to situate a battle in the Sahara, the desert, the forest, the jungle, whatever it may be, you get the idea. Like all of a sudden, it's a big disadvantage because they have zero fucking metal. Another thing I noticed is that when I came across the metal bending army, I started to realize, well, they had metal on their entire armor, which is fascinating because it made me think, what if there was someone more proficient at metal bending than you? All of a sudden they could redirect your moves, or worse, even make sure that your bending is entirely neutralized. And then you have nothing. They could literally stab you and imprison you. Like they would fuck you. It's also important to note that metal benders actually struggle to manipulate metals that are highly processed and or like have higher purity in them. So anything like platinum, for example, making it harder to control, and I'm gonna put it in God tier below lava bending. Alright, ice bending. I'm only going to touch on this for a short bit, and then I'm going to probably move on because it's such a small element. But it is technically a sub-bending, or a type of bending that's like different to the original. This one's good because you can literally change it into any weapon you want. Like you can turn it into a hook, a staff, freeze your opponent, and then hit them while they're frozen. Like I'll sit here and say like, it can literally disable any type of bender except for a firebender. Like to me, that's insane. Like because technically speaking, like a firebender can literally breathe and use their bending. So they could just melt the ice. You know what I mean? That's assuming that the ice bender doesn't really have as much control. So that to me is something that's like super impressive. I'll put this shit up in like A tier, to be honest with you. Very cool, putting it below lightning. Alright, Seismic Sense. I feel like this is one of probably the most misunderstood or underrated ones, specifically because if you think about it, if you give it to any non-bending type of human being, like they can literally become twice as powerful as they already are. Like Suki, Sokka, Tai Li. Imagine having chi blocking abilities and Seismic Sense. Like all of a sudden you just become unbeatable. Like you can just sneak up on someone, chi block them, and then they're fucking down. I think having that sort of awareness and presence on a battlefield can be absolutely game-changing. It does have some flaws, and it does have some things that definitely take away from the ability itself. Like for example, like you still are immobile for a slight moment, like just by stomping and listening. Mid-tier or like usable. No, probably a bit better than that. I'd probably put it above that. So yeah, mainly enhances individuals and barely has any drawbacks. So I'm putting it above lightning. This one is interesting because Earth for me is probably one of the most versatile elements out of any of the other four. You can change anything into like your personal platform you can play with. What more do you want from that? You can turn rocks into liquid or use mud bending. You can change it into any state of matter you want. Like you can even sandbend. Like that is like a sub-bending type, and every earthbender can do that. You can use anything and change it into anything you want and then apply that in a fight, and it can be somewhat useful. It's also majority of the place you're standing on. Like no one's gonna be running around on water unless you change it into ice, which a waterbender can do, but like no one fights on those surfaces. Like 90% of the time, both in the Avatar world or any other place, you're fighting on land. And unfortunately, earthbenders have way more of a head start than any other bender in that scenario. Perhaps instead of something like airbending. I feel like with an earthbender, you could literally just trap someone's foot and then encase them in there. You can build your own home. It has so much utility as well for not only fighting, but also survival. People want to put a situation where earthbenders, waterbenders, and airbenders and firebenders are trapped in a log cabin, for example, or like a wood prison. I feel like that's such a specific example because you can put multiple scenarios out there where you can put any other bender out of commission. Like if you put a firebender in the North Pole, like for example, the Zuko episodes where they're trying to capture the Red Lotus, for example, and Plea, and all those sorts of people. Or you could put a waterbender near a volcano. You could put an earthbender in a log cabin, like for example. But I feel like Earth just has so much utility and it's so usable. For me, that is the second best bending type. There's nothing better than it. You can do so much with it. And the applications you have, like for example, in the light novel, there's a guy called Yun. You could technically use every element to his advantage, but not really. I'm putting Earth just below metal. Alright, next up we have waterbending. Waterbending for me is literally OP. I mean, 70% of the world's surface is water. Like, that's kind of cheating. Like, I keep saying that, but it's true. I mean, the fact that I sweat, water. I haven't even talked about even the plants yet. You know, like, people don't really think about waterbenders enough to be like, oh shit, like, they can really use my sweat. And they can use your blood too. But if we want to stick to the base level bending, because we want to look at things on their own, you know, people want to come up with stupid hypotheticals. What if they're on Everest in a log cabin? The only thing they can do is use sweat and all this other shit. Like, to me, that doesn't matter. I don't care. You know what I mean? If my mother had wheels, she'd be a bike, but she doesn't. I don't care. I don't give a shit. For waterbenders, they can manipulate anything to design, like sort of like an earthbender, which I'll get into later. But the issue with waterbending and why I'm not putting it in second or first, and I'm leaving it at third, putting it over firebending, is because it's really easy to determine what they're gonna do. Unless they somehow move the water from behind you, like, you kind of need the substance in order to bend it. With earth, we can literally only run on rock. We can move on rock or earth surfaces. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be swimming and bending. That's too difficult. So for me, it's not heavily able to be utilized, but at the same time, it's incredibly versatile and you can pretty much mold it to your imagination. So I'm going to put that at third, in my opinion. And next we have firebending, which is honestly like the least telegraphed out of all the other elements. It's like really hard to predict, really hard, which I find like super interesting to me because anything else you can literally see coming from a mile away, especially waterbending. Actually, I would say that airbending is pretty hard, but I would say besides that, like fire is the go-to thing for efficiency, speed, ferocity, which is kind of funny because it's shown in their temperament. But I will say this, one thing I have noticed is it's pretty versatile. Like, you can use it to warm your body temperature, like Zuko uses it in the last season of the last episode or something like that. When he's going in the polar ice caps, it keeps himself warm. Then there's also the other factor that you can literally use it as a torch in the cave. Like, you can use it in so many ways, and literally it burns people. It scorches you, so it's like death, you know? Like, if you get hit with a boulder, no one really dies in the Avatar universe. They kind of just get knocked on their ass, which is like one thing entirely. But I will say this, one thing I've noticed a lot is that somehow age and wisdom is like equivalent to like skill within the Avatar universe. Like, if you think about it, like being old means you're a better bender, like, which is kind of weird to me. Like, you look at Iroh, who else? We got Monkey also, we have like the Earthbender, Boomy. I'm not sure what the Firebender is. Oh yeah, I mentioned Iroh. That's pretty much it. Like, the older you get, the more you can fuck people up, which is actually pretty funny. Like, imagine an old dude walking past you and just like kicking your ass. I'm putting it below waterbending. There's just zero defensive capabilities. Airbending. Now, airbending is a massive one for me, only because of the fact that if you're an airbender, you can literally kill anyone. You can beat anyone. Like, you can do anything. The fact that you can control the element we breathe, that's like cheating. Like, the fuck? Like, I don't even know how you beat that. Like, what do you do? What do you do for that? You do nothing. You die. The episode where Zahir, or like the Red Lotus, was capturing the Avatar, like Korra, and we saw Tenzin take on the entire Red Lotus. Klee, the waterbender, Zahir, he took on a lava bender, a waterbender, and an airbender, and he fucking beat them all. Tenzin shitted on everyone. Not to mention the fact that in book 1 of Avatar The Last Airbender, Aang only had airbending, and he was able to get away with so much. And he was fucking 12. He was a little child. Airbending beats everyone. The fact that you can have the versatility, jumping, and like the idea that you can have some sort of like freestyle sort of martial arts approach to fighting a battle, and you can leverage off of the air to bounce off of and somehow fly using a contraption. You can do so much. It's not limiting. Like, you're not limited to much as an airbender. You can crush rocks. You can blow fire in an alternate direction. You can blow someone else's water. Like, in fact, the fact that you have the ability to fly too without a contraption, which is what we saw from Zahir, but is very rare. The only way you can be stopped is if somehow like an earthbender sort of leverages you on the ground, or putting ice on you as a waterbender. Like, if someone's a waterbender. Like, that's the only way to get around it. But you can always crush the ice, crush the earth, maybe. And if you think about it, you just avoid the spots you don't want to go. There's only a couple places that you're vulnerable. You can use the air to generate bending. Like, you can generate bending out of nothing. Actually similar to a firebender, because they can produce their own fire. So can airbenders. But you can't really do that as an earthbender unless you have earth. Same with a waterbender unless you have water. And there we have it, the final tier list, guys. I put airbending in between metal and earth, so that's what I think of it. It's easily the #1 bending type, at least main bending element. And if you really enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out this one right here, which I review Avatar: The Last Airbender, or I talk about the craziest character of all time. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bloody legend.